Yeah, it's time to be concerned about the Sacramento Kings, who are now a game under 500, 8-9 on the season. They're an inexcusable 4-5 at home, and they just lost to the Brooklyn Nets 108 to 103. There might be a lot of season left, but there's not a lot about this Kings team that makes me confident in their ability to turn things around right now. Let's discuss it right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And while I'm not quite at the panic stage yet, although I understand if some of you Kings fans are after tonight's game, it is definitely time to be concerned about the Kings. Sure, we're 17 games into an 82-game season. Of course, there is plenty of time for the Kings to turn it around. Mathematically, they are not out of things by any means. One hot run, and this Kings team can not just get right back into the mix of the Western Conference. They could vault themselves up from 12th place, where they're at right now, all the way up into the top 6. I won't say pretty easily, but it's more than possible, right, with so much of the season to go. So I'm certainly not in the boat of season's over, this team's cooked, this team's doomed. But I am concerned, of course, by the overall outlook of where this team is right now, falling to 8-9, losing to a Brooklyn Nets team, which I understand the Nets have NBA players. I understand, like, not to be disrespectful, that team plays hard, right? Jordi Fernandez, former Sacramento Kings assistant coach, former lead assistant, is coaching the hell out of that team. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the Nets, but you look at that roster, you look at the Sacramento Kings roster, and you take into account that the Kings are at home. This game should not have been difficult for the Kings to win, and yet it is. In fact, it's not even difficult for them to win because they didn't win. They just straight up lost. They got beat handily tonight by the Brooklyn Nets. 6-10. That's where the Nets were coming into tonight's game. They're now 7-10 on the season. The Kings 8-9 on the season. And the problem is with the Nets is they look like the exact same team as with the other 28 that come through the Golden One Center. They have all the confidence in the world when they play in this building. Why? Because for some reason, every team except for the Sacramento Kings seems to be able to shoot well in this building. However, I will say the Kings did shoot well tonight, and it didn't matter. We'll get into that. But the Nets came in with confidence, were knocking down shots left and right. They shot 19 of 39, 49% from three-point range. They were shooting in like the 70s and 80s percentage from the field and from three-point range throughout the first quarter. And the problem was, so were the Kings, right? The Kings, who last game against the Los Angeles Clippers in the Intuit Dome, right? The Kings are so ice cold from the field to start the game. They scored 29 points in the first half. It makes sense if you're only scoring 29 points that you fell behind by 25. The Kings were shooting 77% from the field, and they were still down by 13 points early on in this game. Why? Because at the time, the Nets had like 12 or 13 more field goal attempts than the Sacramento Kings did because the Kings were not taking care of the basketball. They turned the ball over 16 times tonight, resulting in 24 points for the Brooklyn Nets. And while the Nets only had 6 offensive rebounds, a handful of them came in that first quarter. So the Nets were out hustling you. They were far more physical than you. They got all the confidence in the world, knocking down shots, right? 19 threes made for the Brooklyn Nets, who are not a terrible three-point shooting team, but they should not be that good. You got cooked by Cam Thomas tonight, who had 34 points. He looked fantastic. You got cooked by the entire Brooklyn Nets bench, who scored 44 points, while your bench managed just 9. And that was all from one dude. We'll get into that later on in the podcast. right? The Kings just got completely outplayed and outworked by a, I'm sorry, bottom feeder team in the Eastern Conference. Add it to the list of how many times have we seen games like this inside the Golden One Center against bad Eastern Conference teams. The Sacramento Kings lay a freaking egg. And that's what comes back to kill them when it comes to the race in the Western Conference. So yes, I'm concerned because that trend is continuing. And a new trend is beginning for the Sacramento Kings, which is they are getting off to slow starts, falling far behind, and then rallying to put together these major pushes. And you're going to turn that into a positive and say, look at the resiliency of the Sacramento Kings. They battled back from 19 points down to even take a lead in this game. They should not be down that much to begin with. And as great as it is that this team is resilient and is never out of a basketball game, they put themselves in crap positions every single night, it seems, before they finally wake up and recognize, oh, we got to start playing some freaking basketball here and play up to their level. It can't keep happening. I asked Mike Brown about it at the beginning of the game. And then after the game, when the exact same thing happened, I asked Mike Brown about it again. Here's my question. Here's Mike's answer. We're going to break it down. Mike, we touched on this pregame.
Yep.
A 19-point deficit. Again, you guys battle back and make a game of it, but it's these starts or these lulls that are seemingly waking the team up. What is happening or what needs to change? Is it a leadership thing? I know you've shared before about when LeBron would kind of bring everybody together in your time in Cleveland. Is it a leadership thing? Is it just slow starts? Like, what is it about this team that's falling behind so much early that's then waking them up?
Well, right now our level of physicality and attention to detail is not quite there. And like I said, Matty, in the first quarter alone, their two hot players had 3 made threes because we closed short with our hands down. And you can't let anybody, I don't care what their record is or what team they're on, if they can shoot, you got to what we call hip them. But there's got to be a sense of urgency and a little bit of physicality to your game. And right now, we're just easing into everything, and we have to do a better job. And it's a small detail. People will just see the made three, but they don't understand that, hey, this is the game plan against those guys, and this is how you have to stop those three. And so that little detail right there, like, we have to embrace it. We have to embrace what the game plan is, and this is 2 nights in a row, too, that we come out and we don't execute the first play the right way. We walk through it in our walkthrough, and then we draw it up before the game. And 2 games in a row right now, we have executed it right. So our mindset has to be better going into these games on both sides of the floor in order for us to not let teams feel comfortable right away.
There's a lot from that soundbite, and none of it is good, right? None of it is good. He talks about the Kings easing into things, right? They ease into games. They're not paying attention to detail to start a game. They're not playing with enough physicality to start a game. Why does this freaking team think that they have earned the right and the privilege to not start games aggressively, to not start games paying attention to detail? Mike Brown broke it down for us. 2 games in a row where the Kings couldn't even execute their opening play of the freaking game that they had unlimited time to work on in walkthroughs, and that Mike Brown, like you see coaches drawing up plays on their clipboard right before the opening tip. That's the first offensive possession of the game. That's what the Kings want to run right out of the gate to establish themselves offensively. And even though this team was shooting over 77% from the field early on in this game, the first play they did not execute properly because they weren't paying attention to detail. And then Mike talks about they weren't playing physically enough. They were allowing hot shooters of the Brooklyn Nets to get whatever they wanted, which gave the entire team confidence. What has this team done to earn the right to ease their way into ball games? Sure, they can have the confidence, and they deserve the confidence of we're never out of a game, we can always fight back in. That's a great trait to have to save you and bail you out at times during the season, not to call upon every freaking night like it feels like the Kings are doing at this point. Who on the roster, here's the question I have, who on the roster is going to hold this team accountable? Who on the roster is going to stop that? DeMar DeRozan has joined the Sacramento Kings and become part of the problem. DeMar DeRozan has been infected by Kings culture to a point where he's even missing free throws. The Sacramento Kings suddenly forgot how to shoot free throws again. One of the best free throw shooting teams through the first few weeks of the season. Now, here they are at 64.5% tonight, 20 of 31. They leave 11 points at the line. They lose by 5 points tonight. Like, DeMar has come into Sacramento and the Kings have gotten to him. I don't know. So and DeMar's never really been the kind of leader that's going to grab guys by the collar and start yelling at them. I know Malik Monk is out, and hopefully he'll be back tomorrow because he went from doubtful to questionable before today's game. So he's improving. He's moving in the right direction. So hopefully he will be good to go tomorrow against OKC, and the Kings desperately need him. We know Malik is a very vocal guy on this roster. Is Malik going to be the guy to hold these guys accountable? I don't know. Maybe is it going to be your top guys that have been here this entire time, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis? De'Aaron Fox balled out tonight, and we're going to talk about Fox and DeRozan specifically a little bit more later on in the podcast in the next segment. But is it De'Aaron Fox or Domantas Sabonis that need to start yelling at these guys? Trey Lyles is considered to be the enforcer of this roster. Is Trey Lyles, who scored 0 points tonight on one shot attempt, is Trey Lyles going to be the one to start holding guys accountable? And I say players because, look, while it absolutely is on Mike Brown and the coaching staff to hold this team accountable and to get them ready to go, and it does reflect on them if the Kings are consistently coming out of the gate slow, that is a coaching problem too. But Mike Brown should have gotten tossed from this freaking game. I've never seen him so hot. And he made physical contact with the referee. It wasn't egregious, wasn't anything bad, but he should get fined for it. Like that, and it's a miracle in the second quarter that Mike Brown didn't get tossed. And a lot of people thought it was reacting to the officiating, and to some extent it was, right? Colby Jones was fouled on one end, did not get the foul call. Nets go back on the other end, hit another one of their bajillion threes to put them up by 19 points at that point. Mike Brown goes running right at the official, makes contact with him, should have been tossed out of the game. De'Aaron Fox actually saved him. De'Aaron grabbed him and pulled him back. I don't know how in the world Mike didn't get tossed. But credit to Mike Brown. I love every bit of that, and I believe that Mike did that. Yes, he was frustrated at the officiating, but I think Mike also did that to wake his freaking team up. Because this team was sleepwalking again. You just got punked in LA after scoring 29 points in the first half. You return home to Sacramento in front of another great crowd here, and you come out slow and flat against the Brooklyn Nets. You're doing it again. And I think Mike did that more to fire his team up and wake his team up and recognize a sense of urgency from somebody and someone to show some freaking emotion. I think he did that more for the team than he did to change a ref's mind. And it worked. The Kings ended up battling back to, I think, within single digits or around 10 points at halftime. And then in the third quarter, they got this game all the way to tie. They even had a lead, I think, late in the third quarter before the Nets tied it again with another three at the buzzer heading into the fourth. So I loved Mike Brown's tech. I love him firing this team up. But who in the world is going to step up from a player's standpoint and make sure this crap can't keep happening? Because they're clearly frustrated by it. But it's one thing to be frustrated. It's another thing to just allow it to continue to happen, or to be so upset about it that they decide this is not going to happen anymore. The Kings need to make that decision. We are not going to start this way anymore. We're not going to allow any team, let alone the Brooklyn frickin' Nets, to come into Sacramento and punk us and shoot like it's their home gym. We're not going to allow it. Until they decide to do that, or they decide to put their foot down in that way, and the players decide to do that, nothing's going to change. I'm going to share with you, this is the first night where DeMar DeRozan really bothered me. I'll explain why in just a second. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by SKIMS. Yes, I'm talking about the underwear company SKIMS. And you might be familiar with SKIMS because you may have bought a pair of SKIMS underwear for the lady in your life. Or ladies, you may just primarily be wearing SKIMS yourself. But SKIMS is making boxers and underwear for men now, and it is game-changing. I'm wearing a pair of SKIMS right now. I've never been more comfortable. SKIMS is a game changer. They have their cotton briefs, their stretch briefs. Like in high school, I was a boxers guy, right? I always wore boxers, and in college, I switched to the boxer briefs a little bit. Until now, I've never been a briefs guy before. Now that I'm in this adulthood, right? Like the briefs, man, they're super comfortable. You can use them for whether you're being active or just everyday wear, right? These SKIMS briefs that I'm wearing are second to none. Truly, they are incredible. I don't think I can go back to any other kind of underwear after wearing Skims. You can shop Skims Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA, and make sure you let them know that the Locked On Kings podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network sent you. As you place your order, select podcasts in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu, Locked On Kings, that follows. And if you're looking for perfect gifts here during the holiday season, maybe some stocking stuffers, they say nobody wants to get underwear for Christmas, but if you're giving someone Skims or you're getting Skims for Christmas, trust me, you hit a gold mine. Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. It's available at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. It was great to see DeMar DeRozan in person again here in Sacramento, back from his back injury. But I will say this is the first night that DeMar DeRozan frustrated me. And I don't know how much of it is on DeMar, how much of it is on the Kings and their game plan, but De'Aaron Fox was cooking again in the first half. Like, cooking. He had 24 points on 7 of 9 shooting from the field, a perfect 3 of 3 from three-point range at halftime. According to StatMuse, he's only second to Jason Tatum for more 20-point halves this season, right? Fox continues to be playing super, super well. And tonight, he finished with a team-high 31 points on 10 of 16 shooting. But in the second half, Fox had 7 total attempts. 7 total attempts in the second half. DeMar DeRozan had 14. Domantas Sabonis had 10. So De'Aaron Fox is cooking. De'Aaron Fox has been your best player, is your best player, and is the hot hand. And you went away from him. And I know how important DeMar DeRozan is. I know how great of an isolation scorer he is. I know how reliable DeMar DeRozan has already been for the Kings in terms of go and get us a bucket, DeMar, we need it, right? So while I'm not saying that the Kings should start going away from DeMar DeRozan by any means, and I imagine his back did play an impact on some of his play tonight, although no one's going to use that as an excuse. De'Aaron had it tonight. It was De'Aaron's night. De'Aaron was cooking again, and DeMar shot twice the amount of shots as Fox. I think the Sacramento Kings were trying to force DeMar to get himself going in this second half, and therefore taking the ball out of Fox's hands too much. The Kings had only 15 points in the fourth quarter. Once again, ice cold in the fourth quarter, and it's been a trend at times so far this season. Only 15 points in the fourth quarter. De'Aaron Fox 0 of 3 from the field in the fourth quarter. DeMar DeRozan 3 of 8. So DeMar took 5 more shots than Fox did in the fourth quarter. And Domantas Sabonis 1 of 6, took twice the amount of shots as De'Aaron Fox in the fourth quarter. Now, of course, some of this blame does go on Fox too. De'Aaron, demand the frickin' basketball. And I'm sure he's tired, but demand the frickin' basketball. You're the guy tonight. Go out and win this game. When De'Aaron Fox went out of the game, actually, the game was close. De'Aaron Fox went out for like a 3-minute breather, and I think the Nets went on a 9-0 run during that point that pretty much put this game away. Fox is the guy. Give Fox the ball. I thought too many times DeMar was looking for his, or the Kings were trying to get DeMar going. The Kings were trying to rely too much on DeMar in the fourth quarter when Fox was clearly the hot hand the entire night, and he's been unguardable for the last couple of weeks. There hasn't really been a player in the Western Conference better than De'Aaron over the last couple of weeks. Give Fox the basketball. You don't need to feed DeMar DeRozan endlessly if he doesn't have it tonight. If DeRozan has a bad night, that's fine. It's going to happen. DeRozan was not hot. De'Aaron Fox was. Give Fox the ball in those spots. Let's talk about the Kings bench. What bench? Literally, what bench? The guys sitting next to Mike Brown and Luke Laux and the rest of the Kings and Jay Triano and the Kings coaching staff, those guys that came into the game and did absolutely nothing, 9 total points from the bench tonight. All 9 of them scored by Keon Ellis. The Brooklyn Nets had 44. So the Nets, again, a bad team with a worse roster, came in and outscored your bench 44-9. Inexcusable. Trey Lyles, 0 points on 1 field goal attempt in 19 minutes. Come on, man. Trey was playing so well when DeRozan and Sabonis were out. He was playing so well. Looked like he figured it out. The top guys come back. Trey Lyles falls off the face of the earth again. And then, I'm sorry, I don't mean to bag on the guy. Colby Jones played 17 minutes tonight. Colby Jones, who's a borderline at best NBA rotation player. I know he just had a good performance in Stockton, which shout out the Stockton Kings. They beat the South Bay Lakers tonight, so at least one Kings team won this evening. I know Colby just had a pretty good game in Stockton. That's great. He comes to the NBA, he's not doing anything. He had 0 points and was a team worst minus 16. Again, plus and minus, not my favorite stat, but what does that tell you? When Colby Jones was in the game, things weren't going right for Sacramento. And he was the worst of just a bad bench in general. How the hell is Colby Jones playing over Jordan McLaughlin, who was playing well when DeRozan and Sabonis were out just a handful of games ago? It doesn't make sense. I certainly blame Mike Brown for that. But this Kings second unit sucks. And it doesn't make sense why. It doesn't make sense why Trey Lyles gives you 0 points and only takes one freaking shot. It doesn't make sense why Colby Jones is playing over Jordan McLaughlin. It doesn't make sense why Keon Ellis is scoring all of your points off your second unit. And I know Malik Monk's going to come back and make a difference with how important he is to this team, but Malik Monk can't be your entire bench. At that point, we're not calling him the sixth man of the year. We're calling him the sixth man on the freaking roster that this Kings team has. 6 out of 6. This second unit has been abysmal this season when the Kings have been at full strength. And I don't want to have to blame the top of this lineup and roster. It doesn't make sense. It's a common denominator at this point, but it doesn't make sense that DeMar DeRozan playing is hurting the Kings bench. That doesn't make sense because when you watch it, it's not like DeMar is doing anything specifically to take away from the Kings bench, but for some reason, when the Kings have their top guys, the bench is coming in and not doing anything. And I don't get it. I do not get it. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by another pair of fantastic sponsors, the first one being FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action all season long with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. Of course, you can also bet on Sacramento Kings action. You can bet on basketball, baseball, hockey, college athletics, so many different things you can bet on FanDuel, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by Game Time. This is the app you need to be using to buy your Kings tickets or any tickets to any event from here on out. Not just a sporting event, but a concert, theatrical production, comedy show, whatever it is. Check Game Time first, because here's what you're going to find on Game Time. The best prices, the best seat views, the best features, no nonsense, just the best way for you to get the tickets to the event that you want to go to. They have a feature called Game Time Picks that's so simple and yet so efficient and so great when you're experiencing it for the first time, right? It sifts through all the tickets that are available and shows you only the best deals in the best areas at different price points, so you find the right tickets for your budget, or really the best tickets for your budget, right? They also have seat views, so you know exactly what your view is going to be like from your seat when you purchase for all different types of venues. And they have an all-in pricing feature that's really good, right? You look, the price you see when you're selecting your tickets, that is the price you're paying. No hidden fees or anything. Those include the fees. So, for example, I bought tickets tonight for my wife and my in-laws to come to the game. I got them on Game Time. It was easy to choose tickets because I knew exactly what I was going to be paying per ticket right from the very beginning. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So there are a couple positive things to touch on from this game. I actually was really happy with this game from Keegan Murray. It could have been better, of course, and maybe the Kings would have won had it have been better, but I'm certainly not blaming Keegan Murray for the Kings' loss tonight. He's part of the blame, sure, because he's part of the team that was not executing, especially early in this game. But I liked how Keegan performed this evening. He got off to another slow start. He actually knocked down his first three-point attempt and then missed 4 straight after that early on in this game. So he starts the game 1 of 5 from three-point range. Looks like the slump is continuing, just has no rhythm shooting the basketball. So what does he do? He ends up scoring 21 points on 7 of 14 shooting from the field. Has 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block. He went into attack mode. Okay, I'm not knocking down threes. All right, I'm going to put the ball on the floor. I'm going to attack the basket. He had a nice turnaround fader that actually tied the game after the Kings were down by 19. A really nice shot. He was attacking the basket. He went for a poster dunk that, oh my God, would have blown the roof off this freaking place if he had finished it. He didn't because he was fouled. Went to the foul line. I think missed, of course, one of the free throws because everybody on the Kings was missing free throws tonight. But Keegan was in attack mode, and I like the fact that he was clearly frustrated as we could see Keegan get, right? He's clearly frustrated. He knows he's continuing to slump. He's not shooting the ball well. I'm sure it's agitating him far more than it's agitating any of us who are going through watching it and just hoping and praying it'll get better for him. And he says, you know what, screw this. I'm going to score one way or another. I'm going to get to the basket. I'm going to get to the basket. I'm going to grab rebounds. I'm going to try and get to the foul line. I'm going to be physical. I'm going to use my size, and I'm going to attack. I like that from Keegan Murray. I like that mindset, and it helped the Sacramento Kings get back into this game. Unfortunately, it didn't help the Kings ultimately win this game. But Keegan, I thought, was really solid, especially in that third quarter. Right now, he's under a microscope. He's under a microscope because everybody knows he's struggling. Everybody knows he's struggling. But here's the thing. In addition to being under a microscope, he's also on a freaking island. Because when it comes to his position, he is it. He is the only legitimate NBA 3/4 wing that the Kings have. That's it. I know DeMar DeRozan is a wing, but he's a 2-3. Kevin Huerter, if you want to classify him as a wing, that's fine. He's a 2-3, more of a guard than a forward. Keegan Murray is by himself on this roster. And even Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles is like a 4-5. He's not really a wing. He's a forward center hybrid. Small ball 5. Right? Keegan is by himself. And I know that doesn't excuse anything. And we're not making an excuse for Keegan because he still has to execute. But just because Monty McNair and the Kings front office is confident that Keegan can be a all-star caliber forward and the all-star caliber 3-and-D wing for this Kings team doesn't mean that they can't have any other options on this freaking roster. And it's unfortunately early on this season starting to show that while Monty did go out and add DeMar DeRozan, and he's been a good addition, ultimately, Monty, again, did not address the biggest concern of this team, which is lack of depth at the wing and struggles with physicality. Because like you heard from Mike Brown earlier on in the season, early on in the episode, the Kings are struggling out of the gate of games, matching physicality and playing with the right level of physicality. It's almost like it's been a problem, and we just expected it to go away, and it hasn't. And here the Kings are, a game under 500, 17 games into the season because of it. I also, another positive, I loved the throwbacks. It's probably pretty blurry. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, you can't really see it behind me. But they brought back the old 90s and early 2000s Kings logo. I freaking love it. Keep it. Keep it that way. It's so much better than the stupid, generic, all the modern logos around the NBA. They all suck. Bring back the vintage logos for all of these teams. Not super vintage, because not like the Kansas City Kings and early Sacramento Kings, red, white, and blue. Those can stay retired. But the old purple and black Kings jersey, the old SK on the corners of the court, bring that crap. It is back. Keep it here. It looks so good. It just feels right. I love to see them. I love to see those purples, the old Sacramento purples from the early 2000s that Doug Christie and Mike Bibby and Peja and C-Web and Vlade, who was sitting courtside tonight, that all of them were wearing. Love that they're back. Unfortunately, the Sacramento Kings didn't really do them justice tonight in the loss to the Brooklyn Nets, but I love to see them back. Keep it. Just keep it. It made me happy. Made me happy to see. Brought back a lot of great memories from my childhood of seeing that logo every night with great Kings teams in the late 90s and early 2000s. Also, once again, the wife is banned. The wife is banned. 0-8. 0-8 now. 0-8 in her time, at least dating and marrying me. She's 0-8 at Kings games. I mean, I'm almost like, maybe I'm the problem, because stubbornly I'm like, nope, she's gonna come back out here and we're gonna break this freaking curse. We're gonna break it. She deserves to see a freaking win. She deserves to see a beam. She's never seen the beam. She's seen it from afar, like driving past it on the freeway. She's never seen the beam in person, which is heartbreaking. She needs to see it. So I hate to break it to you, she's gonna come to more games this season. And at some point, this freaking, it's gonna break. This curse is gonna break. But God Almighty, she's seen it all. She's seen losses to great teams. She's seen losses to middle of the road teams, and now she just saw a loss to the Brooklyn freaking Nets. But if we're being honest too, the Kings in general at home are not good. And we can talk about things that this Kings team is doing so far this season and things the Kings did tonight and things that are inexcusable. We can talk about that for sure, and I've listed a bunch of them already on this show. Nothing is more inexcusable for the Sacramento Kings, who are trying to not just be a playoff team again, but are trying to be a 50-plus win team. Nothing is more inexcusable than in your first 9 games at home going 4-5. Why is this Kings team bad at home? It does not make sense. It does not make sense, and they need to figure it the hell out, because that is a them problem, not an us problem. It's not the crowd. It's not the Golden One Center. It's not the beam. It's a them problem. They just do not play well in this building, and so many other teams come in here and shoot like it's their home gym. I don't get it. I don't understand why, but the Kings need to clean that crap up, because 12 of their next 18 games are in this building, and including tomorrow night when you're taking on, one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league, other than the Cavaliers, in the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm sure, you lost to the Brooklyn Nets tonight. I'm sure tomorrow against OKC will go better, although it would be perfect Kings in the case of it wouldn't make any sense for the Kings to win tomorrow night against OKC. You know what? I hope it happens. But you had a doubleheader at home against the Nets and the Thunder, and you lost that game to the Nets. Yeah, you can't be feeling good. And again, this was a stretch. We're going into Game 7 out of a 7-game stretch where 6 of them are at home. And what did I tell you? The Kings, bare minimum, have to go 4-2. The goal is to go 5-1, and if they can go 6-0, that's fantastic in those 6 home games. Now, at best, they can go 2-4. Sorry, is that right? No, 3-4. No, 2-4. Right? Math. The math ain't mathin'. They lost to Atlanta. They lost to... No, at best they can go 3-3. Sorry. That's just my brain tonight, apparently. Yeah, at best the Kings can go 3-3 over these 6 games. At best they can go 500. And they have to do that by beating the Oklahoma City Thunder. Well, no matter what happens, I'll be here in the Golden One Center. I'll have a post-game pod for you. If you're coming to the game, bring your patience and bring every bit of good luck that you have, because the Kings are going to need it. But if you're coming to the game, I'd love to see you. Love to say hi. For those of you who came to the game tonight and said hi, I appreciate you so much. Hopefully we're all in a better mood tomorrow night at this time when I record another post-game podcast after that game. But for now, frustrations and, yes, concern. You want to air your concerns with me and share your thoughts with me? Let them fly. At MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.